friends, and welcome to the My Slice of Life podcast. My name is Sharon O'Neill, and this is the last full episode of the season, which I called Let's Get Productive. And this season has been packed full of useful information and tips to help us all improve our productivity without just doing more. And when I say our productivity, it's really because I needed these tips as much as the next person. And I wanted to find ways of improving the productivity without just adding more onto my plate, so that's why I did the season. And this week, we're going to take a look at the common mistakes we make when it comes to productivity. But just before we dive in, I want to let you know that if you are one of my listeners who only listens on YouTube, please check out the link in the description for the actual podcast site and subscribe there. As this will be the last season which goes out on YouTube, I'm making a few changes to my online stuff, so the podcast won't be going out on YouTube anymore when this season finishes. I'm saying click the link. The podcast is on pretty much every good podcast site, but the one in the link is the main one I upload to, and I respond to comments on that probably more frequently than any of the others. Actually, it would be great if you would all subscribe or follow no matter where you listen, because I can see from the data that not all listeners do that, so that would be lovely if you fancy doing that, and it would really help me out too. Right then, now that's taken care of, I'm going to jump into the first mistake we make when it comes to productivity, and it's one I don't see on the lists, actually, but I think it's the biggest mistake that so many of us make. So top of my list, we need to stop farting around. And you don't see this on any list or any app, but you need someone to tell you it straight. Stop farting around. And I know bigger and fancier words are used here to describe the sort of thing I'm talking about. I don't think it's just procrastinating though, because that doesn't really cover what I mean. You know, like when you've got something to do and you just don't seem to do anything. It's not like procrastinating when you might do other little jobs. This is more like totally unproductive movement. You go from room to room, you might pick up the odd thing or two, shift things around a bit. Basically, you're just wasting time and farting around. Stop it. I catch myself doing it, and before I know it, an hour has passed and I've achieved nothing. I haven't been sitting around doing nothing either, and I try and convince myself I've been really busy. But facts are facts. I've been farting around, and that is something I need to stop. The next big mistake a lot of us make is multitasking. We think we're being really good and productive. Oh, look at me doing 3 things at once, isn't this great? Well, actually, no, it's not great. And it's been found that when we're trying to do too many things at once, we don't concentrate properly on anything. Our focus goes down and our number of mistakes goes up, which isn't good, obviously. So if we want to be productive in a positive way, we should be single tasking. That's working on one job at a time so we can give our full focus and concentration to it. Okay, that makes sense, but I also understand why we multitask, and I think it comes down to feeling overwhelmed, really. So we feel like we can get 3 jobs knocked off the list at once, but when we realise we aren't doing those 3 jobs well and could actually be making more work for ourselves because there'll be mistakes made, jobs not done properly, and it starts to make more sense to just do one thing at a time. The next big productivity mistake is a real personal peeve of mine, and that is unproductive meetings. And I'm really lucky now because I don't have meetings to go to, but at one point I went to loads of them and they were not all productive. Many years ago when I worked in the NHS, I used to dread the meetings for a couple of different reasons. But the main reason was the amount of time they took up, and I'm talking hours. I have one memory in particular which still baffles me to this day. I somehow got roped into this meeting, right, and it was about when to have a meeting. And no, I'm not even joking. The amount of money sat round the table, I'm talking consultant psychiatrist, the junior doctor, a couple of nursing staff, an occupational therapist. I mean, that's the minimum that I remember being there, so there could have been more. But that's what the meeting was about. It was, let's all get together and see when we can get together. It was ridiculous. And even in the department I was based in, meetings were a nightmare. We took it in turns to be the chair. Yep, it was as exciting as it sounds. but I was so sick of people turning up late and, you know, like just showing up when they felt like it. And I was also really fed up of other people not starting the meetings until everyone turned up. So when it came to my turn, you know what I did? Yeah, I started that thing right on time. So when they came crawling in and I'd expected all of us just sit and wait, they actually got embarrassed about it. Eventually, people did start using their watches and got there on time. I realise this may make me sound a bit Nurse Ratched, but we worked on an appointment basis there, you know, and it really got on my nerves, and to this day I still hate lateness. I worked other jobs too where the meetings just got turned into a gossip fest. I mean, a total waste of time, and just drove up the negativity, which I covered in last week's episode if you haven't heard that one yet. So if you are going to hold a meeting, have a clear idea about the agenda, for goodness sake. What goals are you aiming for? Have a clear focus so your meetings are actually helpful and productive. Don't have them going on for ages if they don't need to go on for ages, and the minute somebody starts being negative or gossipy, nip that right in the bud. We don't need that. Okay, this next mistake applies to all of us, no matter where we are, and I am very, very guilty of this. Distractions. I am so easily distracted, it's not even funny, so I'm really trying to set some boundaries on my time. I'm not quite there yet, but I think I am a little better than I used to be. I don't use Instagram, X or TikTok, but I do like YouTube, and I have a few other sites which I check daily. Frequently, sometimes. And I find when I have something I know I have to get done, I head for the YouTube shorts. Does that sound familiar at all? And that's a new thing for me. I don't even know how that happened. So I've been pretty good this week. I am trying. I either avoid them or I only watch a couple and then I shut it off. And yes, that does take a lot of willpower, but I am trying. But it's the unawareness though, isn't it? I mean, how often have you lost time because you've allowed yourself to be distracted by something which is nothing to do with what you should be doing? Maybe you find yourself checking your emails 20 times a day, or maybe you head to your favourite on Instagram halfway through the task you're supposed to be doing. Are you even aware you're doing it? Or is it not until later you realise you just wasted another 30 minutes? That's what happens to me, it drives me nuts. So I'm really trying to stop it. We need to stop allowing these non-essential things like social media to derail us the way it does. We have to relearn the ability to focus and do it for a good length of time. And I want to share something with you about that, because I've found I can do that. And when I need to shut everything off so that I can really concentrate, I have found only one thing that really works at the moment, and that's music. And specifically the music that has really helped me is the stuff on YouTube. Now stay with me here because I put it on in the background and then I go and do what I need to do. I type in music to study with and a whole selection comes up. I just pick something from there. And I've worked through quite a lot of them, and quite worryingly, the one I'm finding which works the best for me is the ADHD deep focus stuff. And I don't really know what to make of that, so I'm just going to leave that there. Moving swiftly on to the next productivity mistake. Not prioritising. And I've covered various techniques you can use to help with prioritising in previous episodes, so there are plenty of ideas for you to choose from. But when we don't prioritise tasks, this will often lead to time being wasted on the tasks that really aren't that important at that moment, or at least not the most important. And this will mean you're still left with that big, heavy task to deal with, and you get stressed out because you realise you should have done it first. So prioritising is important, and I know a lot of people don't really rate it, but if you don't prioritise, you're setting yourself up for a lot of problems later on. Now, I've also talked about procrastination before, and it's got its own episode in fact, but I want to give it a quick mention here because it really is a big mistake when it comes to productivity. When we put off important tasks, the ones which should be our highest priority, we just get more stress and our productivity level actually goes down. But the goodish news is that procrastination is a habit we develop, and as I discussed last week, habits can be changed. New and healthier habits can be developed. So if you haven't heard the earlier episode in the season, go and check them out. The procrastination and the habits one, they'll really help you if you're finding that's a problem for you at the moment. Now the next one is not something I expected to see when I was doing research on this, and I'm a little disappointed, if I'm honest. In fact, this is probably the only thing I've read about during the whole season which left me thinking, I'm not sure if I agree with you here. According to some, the next mistake we apparently make is treating yourself to something after completing a difficult task. And if you just said, huh? You're not alone. But according to some people, we should be seeing our accomplishment as the reward. How does that sit with you? Because my seat is pretty uncomfortable right now, I've got to tell you. Don't these people realise that some days I get stuff done purely because of the reward? It can be the only thing that gets me off my butt. In fact, I wasn't even sure if I should put this on the list, but I decided to include it so I could give you as many options as possible, even though I don't actually agree with it. And to be honest, I feel like I need a reward, you know? Hell, I feel like I earned that reward. But apparently when we reward ourselves with a nice little treat, it undermines the actual achievement. And do you know what? I'm not buying this one. I read it, I put it in my notes, but nah, I'm just going to move on. Let me know if you agree with that, because I'm in no way convinced on this, and I'm not about to give up my rewards either. So that's where I stand. Like I say, I found it, I stuck it in my notes, I thought I'll bring it up, because according to some people that's one of the mistakes we make, but I like my rewards and I use them. It works for me, so let me know if that works for you. One I am more prone to agree with, however, is not taking breaks. And since we aren't machines, we just can't keep going on and on and on. We really do need to take regular breaks from our work. Getting a change of scene, some fresh air is so important, and that has actually just reminded me of something. Get this, I was once pulled up by my senior for going out during my lunch break on a regular basis. I would go for a walk, sometimes, after I'd eaten. Sometimes somebody came with me, sometimes I went on my own, but apparently I was just meant to sit in the canteen with everyone else for my whole lunch hour and just be bored to death, to be part of the team. I didn't see that in my contract, so I decided I would do something different. And I went out for a walk. Not all the time, but I did it, quite frequently. I mean, doesn't that sound crazy? We were supposed to be helping other people to live a healthy life, but when I decided to do something healthy and go for a walk, I was discouraged. Having said that, that was actually the same woman who was unhappy about the amount of sick leave I'd had after I'd fractured my spine. I know that isn't a joke, she actually did say that to me, so didn't stay there long after that, I have to say. But the bottom line is, if you want to avoid mental fatigue and having no ability to focus, you need to take regular breaks. The next mistake might be a bit of a surprise to you, or maybe you just haven't realised it, but it's overthinking. When we spend far too much time analysing and thinking decisions instead of just taking action. We're planning and we're planning and we're planning. And I know we need to spend some time thinking about things. That's obvious, but overthinking it leads to what they call analysis paralysis. I quite like that. And that's when we're thinking so much we can't move on and actually get something done. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to start something new and you just thought about it from every angle to the point you couldn't actually get started? I remember doing that when I was trying to decorate my first place. I took measurements, I was thinking colours, I took pictures everywhere and so on and so on. But I was thinking about it so much I couldn't take that first step and actually start the job. Turns out, sometimes the best way to start is to just start. Somewhere, do anything. Just make a start. It doesn't have to be perfect, you can always change it later. Just start. And another error we often make is to do with timings. We think we'll save that hard task for later in the day. But what happens? Well, later in the day, we don't have the energy or just the will to do it, and so the job gets put off till tomorrow when we hope we will have the energy and the will to be able to tackle it. When you plan your day and you're prioritising those tasks, you do need to take into account the times a day when you will be at your best to do the job. If you can, as much as you can. I know it's not always possible, but try. Maybe you're full of energy at the start of the day. Well done, you. And maybe you're pretty much wiped out by early afternoon. Or maybe your peak production is after lunch. Only you'll know. So if you can, use this to your advantage and plan your day accordingly. Now, I've heard it said that we should get our most important tasks done within our first 2 hours of the working day, again, that's another one of the experts' opinions I don't really agree with, because I'm not always that great first thing in the day, but I know later on I will be more productive, so I work around that as much as I can. The last thing I want to mention might not really be classed as a mistake as such, more just something to be aware of, and that is to remember that there are lots of hacks you can try to help you with your productivity. I've discussed many of them throughout this season, and I think sometimes we hear these things but we don't take action. Actually, maybe that's the mistake. We hear things but we don't put them into practice. We don't try them. And if that is you and you feel like you're struggling to be as productive as you want to be, I urge you to try at least a couple of the techniques I've mentioned this season. I've been using quite a few of them, and I have to be really, really honest here. I am finding they've made a bigger difference than I thought they would. And I'm going to leave you with that this week, friends. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you found today's episode and this season helpful. Please do consider leaving a like and a comment and sharing the podcast. You have no idea how much that can help a small creator like me, and I really do appreciate your support. Next week will be the shorter season bonus episode, and then we're moving on to something completely different. Don't forget though, you can leave your suggestions for future seasons in the comments too, so feel free to do that. But until next Monday, you wonderful little joy bunny, you take care of your wee self.